My name is Gabriel Alonso. I'm 68 years old. I live in the mountain city of Baguio in the Philippines. And 3 months ago, I died. Not metaphorically. I died for 7 minutes. Flatline, no heartbeat, no brain activity, nothing. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was kneeling in my small prayer room when a sharp pain pierced through my chest. I thought it was just fatigue. I had skipped breakfast, maybe just low sugar. But then my hands started shaking and I collapsed face first to the floor. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My last thought before the darkness came was, "Is this it? Is this how I go?" I had always believed in God. I was a retired pastor. But I was tired of preaching to people who didn't want to listen, tired of warning about judgment when no one believed it was coming, tired of watching the world get darker while churches stayed silent. If I'm honest, I had stopped expecting anything miraculous. But death wasn't the end. The moment I left my body, I knew something was happening. I didn't just black out. I lifted, yes, lifted, like my soul peeled out of my skin. I saw my own body lying on the cold floor, eyes wide open, mouth half frozen in pain, and then the room stretched. Time disappeared, and suddenly I was standing in a place I had never seen before, but felt like home. It wasn't heaven, not yet. But it wasn't earth either. It was like a corridor between worlds. The light there, it wasn't just brightness. It had weight, color, emotion. And in the middle of that glow stood a figure. At first, I couldn't see his face clearly, but I felt it warmth, peace, authority, familiarity, the kind of presence that makes you drop everything and weep without knowing why. And then I heard his voice. "Gabriel, my son, you're not finished yet." I froze. My knees buckled. Tears came out of me like a waterfall. I didn't know why I was crying, but I couldn't stop. He stepped closer. His face was gentle, not like the paintings, not blonde or European. He looked like someone from our part of the world. Brown skin, eyes like burning oil lamps, deep, ancient grieving, yet full of hope. His robe shimmered like linen woven from stars. "I let you come here not to rest, but to see, and to return." Return. I didn't want to go back. My bones hurt. My soul was tired. But he wasn't asking for my opinion. He was showing me something. And I began to feel it stirring a heaviness in the air, like something enormous was coming. Not just to me, not just to the Philippines, but to the whole world. He reached out his hand. The moment our palms touched, visions exploded behind my eyes. Nations, cities, fires, storms, children crying, leaders lying, churches asleep. Technology spreading like wildfire, but truth shrinking like shadows at dusk. Many will not survive what's coming, not because I won't protect them, but because they will not listen. My heart trembled. My mind wanted to run, but his hand held mine firm. What I'm about to show you is terrifying, but necessary. You will carry it back. You will tell them. And those who listen will be spared. And that's when everything changed. The corridor of light vanished. And suddenly, I was no longer standing. I was floating, suspended between stars and smoke, watching a darkness gather on the horizon like a storm. And I hadn't even seen the worst part yet. I wanted to scream. But his voice, soft and unshaken, whispered again, "Gabriel, do not fear what you will see. Fear what happens if you do not tell them." I didn't know then what that meant, but I would soon. What I saw next would burn itself into my soul forever. The moment my body collapsed on the cold hospital floor, time no longer followed its rules. I didn't fall like a man dying. I was lifted. My eyes didn't shut. They opened wider than ever before. 1 second I was gasping for air on earth. The next, I was standing above myself, watching doctors shout orders, nurses scrambling my mother crying in the hallway. But the strangest thing was the silence. It was as if the entire scene was happening in a glass bubble. I could see everything, but I could not feel anything. No pain, no fear, just release. Then it happened. A great light began to grow behind me. Not harsh or blinding like the sun, but gentle and radiant warm, like the embrace I had longed for my whole life. I turned around slowly. My heart, though no longer beating, somehow knew. I was not alone. He stood there, not as a vision, not as a painting, but as a person, Jesus. And yet, not like any version I had seen in the churches of Manila or in the dusty pages of old children's Bibles. His eyes, they weren't just eyes, they were galaxies of compassion. They didn't judge me even though I had judged myself. They didn't accuse me even though I had sinned. They looked into me and I felt known, not exposed but understood, entirely. He wore a simple robe slightly glowing the color of peace itself. His hands bore scars, yes, but they weren't wounds. They were marks of love, and his presence, oh, it wrapped around me like the wind that follows a storm, the kind that brings tears without asking why. Gabriel, my beloved child, I've waited for you. Those words shattered something in me. I began to weep, not out of sorrow, but from the weight of everything I'd carried, being lifted. You do not belong to death, Gabriel, not yet. I have called you for something far greater than comfort, greater than success. I've called you for truth. I tried to speak, but I had no voice. I only nodded. He extended his hand toward me. The moment I touched it, I felt visions begin to flow not like dreams, but like living memories being downloaded into my soul. My sins flashed before me, but they were not replayed to condemn. They were shown to heal. Every betrayal, every lie, every silent scream I'd buried since childhood. He saw them all and loved me still. You have believed that you were forgotten, but I have been with you in every moment of your pain. When you cried alone at night, I was the whisper in the silence. When you ran toward the world, I ran after you. He began to walk. Without speaking, I followed. What came next, I wasn't ready for. The atmosphere around us changed. The golden warmth became a deep, echoing silence. The path beneath us shimmered like light, walking on water. But around us, there was darkness. Not evil, not threatening, just vastness. I must show you what is coming, Gabriel. Not to frighten you, but to prepare you. Because this generation, the very one you belong to, is standing at the edge of something it cannot imagine. Suddenly, we stopped. Before us appeared what looked like a window, but it was alive. I saw the world, my world, but it was no longer as I knew it. The skyline of Manila was covered in ash. Cities burned in eerie silence. I heard no bombs, no sirens, only the cries of people whose spirits had shattered. Jesus looked at me again. This is not your future, Gabriel, but it is where the road leads if nothing changes. My people are asleep. My church has grown cold. And the ones I love are feeding on shadows, calling them truth. His voice trembled not with fear, but with grief. I gave the world light, but many now prefer the darkness. Not all evil comes with horns, Gabriel. Some come as entertainment, as progress, as comfort. The deceiver wears many masks, and you must unmask him. I wanted to cry out. I felt so small, so unworthy. What could I possibly do? But Jesus knew. It was never about your strength. It has always been about your surrender. I don't need perfect warriors. I need willing messengers. Suddenly, the vision faded. The darkness turned to color. We stood again in the light, but I was trembling. Now you must choose to return and speak what many will mock, or to remain and let the world sleep through its final warning. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel holy. I felt like a young Filipino boy who had failed too often and believed too little. But then I remembered his eyes, his scars, his voice, and I said without speaking, yes. And that was when the real vision began. The light around me slowly dimmed. The peaceful warmth I felt with Jesus began to shift into a heavier presence, one filled with urgency. The scene changed. No longer were we standing in radiant beauty. Now we hovered in a kind of suspended space, like being between dimensions. Below us, visions began to unfold, not dreams but revelations. I saw cities flash before my eyes. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. The mushroom clouds rose like monsters, swallowing everything beneath them. I saw a Japanese child standing still, half burned, unable to cry. I wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. Gabriel, war has never been merely political. It's spiritual. There are forces behind the thrones, powers behind the curtains, and you are about to see their hands. We moved again. Now we were in a luxurious room. Large screens displayed world maps. Men in dark suits sat around a circular table. Their eyes looked tired, but their voices were firm. They weren't just planning policies. They were designing fear. One man tapped his pen on a document labeled Global Response Protocol. Another man said, "If we don't act first, they will." Laughter echoed cold, calculated, hollow. Then I noticed something above them. Dark shapes, like shadows with form, hovered over each man's head, whispering in their ears. They weren't fully human or animal, but they radiated manipulation. And the men listened. They are not acting alone. These are ancient spirits of pride, of revenge, of domination. They feed on division. They poison reason. They whisper destruction as if it were wisdom. My chest tightened. Suddenly, I was inside a secret military base. Technicians monitored screens showing nuclear trajectories. One general stood silently, then gave a single nod. Somewhere far away, a code was entered, and a missile launched. Everything slowed down. I saw the missile rise like a serpent into the sky. Then the screen froze. This is the moment. A decision born not just of strategy, but spiritual blindness. You must understand, Gabriel, what happens in secret shapes the lives of millions. The vision changed again. Now, I stood over Earth as if God's eyes let me see beyond time. I watched governments collaborating publicly, preaching peace, but privately preparing war. I saw labs creating advanced weapons. I saw artificial intelligence being trained not to heal, but to dominate. And then I saw a symbol, a red triangle with a glowing eye in the center. It appeared behind conferences, on documents, even on digital devices. It was hidden in plain sight. This is not merely a mark. It is a banner of control, of deception, a symbol of a world seeking to become its own God. I couldn't breathe. The future was spiraling fast. I saw New York, lights out, sirens blaring. I saw London in chaos. Beijing under martial law. I saw missiles explode above Tel Aviv. I saw children screaming in Manila. No one was safe. Every country had become both enemy and victim. They call it national security. But they are securing their fear, not their people. They speak of unity, but create more division. They label control as peace and war as protection. But I call it deception. I fell to my knees in midair, if that makes sense. "Why are you showing me this?" I cried. "Because you will not be the only one. Many I have chosen will see visions, will dream dreams. But they must know what's at stake. This war begins in the soul." We moved again. I saw churches, mosques, temples, all silent. Doors closed, lights off. People argued on the streets, on screens in courts, but almost no one was praying. Almost no one was listening for God. And then I saw demons celebrating. They danced over newspapers, over social media feeds, over propaganda campaigns. They rejoiced not because of bombs, but because of hearts gone cold. Then I saw something that crushed me. A room full of young people, heads down, staring into neural headsets. They weren't dead, but their spirits were gone, controlled, numb, passive. They had traded wonder for stimulation, traded questions for algorithms, traded purpose for distraction. This is the final weapon. Not fire, not missiles, but disconnection. From each other, from truth, from me. If the youth fall asleep, the world falls with them. My body trembled. The vision of the earth zoomed out again. I saw energy flowing across the globe, lines of influence, of darkness, of false light. But then I saw flickers, tiny sparks here and there, small but bright. "What's that?" I asked. "Those are prayers, real ones, from hearts desperate for truth. And every one weakens the darkness. Every one gives me room to act." I couldn't speak, but I understood something deeply, silently, fully. The future is not yet written, but the ink is being poured. And unless people awaken, unless they choose truth over comfort, prayer over pride, unity over division, then the visions I saw will not be warnings. They will be headlines. Everything around me shifted again. The calm, holy radiance that had surrounded me in the previous vision began to fade. A wind stirred one that seemed not of this world, not natural, not divine, but heavy, laden with anguish. It blew through my spirit like the sound of a weeping earth. Suddenly, I found myself standing on a vast plain, utterly barren. The sky a bruised hue of gray, roiling with clouds like smoke from distant fires. It wasn't the land I knew. It was like standing in the soul of a broken world. In front of me rose a towering figure clothed in black armor, faceless but fierce. Its presence drained hope from the air. Around it swirled lesser shadows, spirits of deception, greed, rage, and despair. I could feel them. I could name them. I had seen their influence in the world. I heard the cries of children behind closed doors. I saw a woman drop to her knees clutching a picture frame. I saw youth marching in the streets, not in peace, but in chaos. Their eyes filled with fire, yet absent of direction. Flags burned, sirens wailed. Cities collapsed under their own corruption. And then Jesus appeared. "Gabriel, what you are witnessing is not only a future possibility, it is already unfolding. The war you see is not of weapons alone, but of hearts, of truth, of eternity. My people are asleep. The enemy is not waiting. He has already marched into their minds." He placed his hand gently upon my shoulder. Instantly, the darkness could not touch me. Look and understand. I saw schools filled with noise but lacking wisdom. Children were being taught not how to think but what to think. I saw the elderly, abandoned in nursing homes' televisions flickering in their rooms, while their souls cried out for someone to remember their names. I saw churches, yes, even churches, where the cross had been replaced with entertainment, where sermons avoided truth in exchange for applause. Truth was treated as optional. Holiness became old-fashioned. And the enemy, he walked openly among them unchallenged. I wept, but Jesus didn't look away. This is the hour of reckoning, my child. The world has traded the eternal for the temporary. The enemy's weapon is not fire, it is apathy. Not destruction, but deception. Then he opened his arms wide, and I saw, beyond the veil, nations were shaking. A map stretched out in the sky, and regions glowed, some with a holy light, others with a searing crimson. I recognized the Philippines, my homeland. Its heart pulsed like a wounded drum. I saw leaders speaking on global stages, their voices calm, but their eyes hollow. I saw devices implanted in the hands of millions, chips that promised connection, but instead whispered confusion. I saw families torn apart not by war, but by distance, by distraction, by the screen in the palm of their hands. Gabriel, the dragon of convenience, now rules over the Tower of Babel reborn. Technology is not evil, but it has become a god to many. The Antichrist will not enter with rage, but with solutions. These words seared into me, not shouted, but eternal. I then saw demonic spirits moving through wires, voices disguised as AI advisors, false prophets streaming through social media digital personalities, leading the youth away from truth. And yet there was still hope. From a distant mountain came a sound, a song, faint but steady, a melody of truth. I turned. There, tiny lights glowing in the valley, homes with candles, Bibles, families kneeling together, crying not in fear but in faith. A child reading Psalm 91 aloud while his father wept silently beside him. An elderly woman clinging to her rosary, whispering Jesus' name through trembling lips. Even in the darkest hour, my light will not fail, for I have a remnant. They are few, but they are not silent, and I will pour my Spirit upon them. Lightning cracked across the sky. A dividing line formed. On one side, chaos, on the other, peace. Not safety, but peace. A divine peace that only Christ could give. I knew then this war was not fought with guns. It was fought in choices, in silent rooms, in bedrooms, classrooms, marketplaces, screens. In moments when no one else is watching. Warn them, Gabriel. The time for lukewarm faith is over. The line has been drawn. Choose now who you will serve. Because silence in the Spirit is agreement with darkness. His eyes pierced mine, not in condemnation, but with urgency, with love too powerful to ignore. The battlefield faded, and I was back in the light. My chest burned not with pain, but with a calling. And I whispered aloud, "Yes, Lord, I will speak. Even if they mock me, I will speak." Because I knew what I had just seen was not a dream. It was a commission to awaken the slumbering, to warn the distracted, to strengthen the faithful, and to stand. When I finally opened my eyes, the blinding white light above me didn't belong to heaven. It came from hospital bulbs. The scent was not of sweet flowers or holy incense, but the sharp sting of antiseptic. My throat was parched. My chest burned with heaviness. I was back. I had returned. My daughter Isabel sat beside me, her eyes swollen with tears. She gasped, "Papa, you're back. We thought we lost you." My grandson held my hand tightly, as if afraid I'd vanish again. But I wasn't the same. Something deep within me had changed. I could still feel the warmth of Jesus' light on my skin. I could still hear his voice echoing in my spirit. Every breath I took felt borrowed from heaven, and every second I lived was no longer mine but a mission. I knew I couldn't waste time. The next morning, though my body trembled with fatigue, I asked for my Bible. I flipped straight to Psalm 91. My fingers, though wrinkled and weak, turned those pages with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The words weren't just ink anymore. They were alive. I looked at my reflection in the hospital mirror. Same face, same gray hair, but in my eyes, fire. A purpose that could not be extinguished. That Sunday I stood again not behind a pulpit but in front of my children and grandchildren. I asked them to sit quietly and I began to tell the truth. I died. I left this world. I met Jesus. And he gave me a message, not just for me, but for you, for this generation. At first they were confused, shocked. Then I saw their faces change, especially the young ones. Their eyes locked with mine, not because I was speaking of death, but because I was speaking to their souls. I could feel it. This generation, the youth, has been drowning in noise, in screens, in despair. Many of them, even within the church, are restless, searching for something, anything. But they don't realize what they're truly longing for is not in the latest trend, not in likes or validation, but in the eternal truth. Gabriel, my beloved, the youth are not lost, they are waiting for someone to show them the way with love, not judgment, truth, not tradition, boldness, not fear. You must speak to them. Tell them that even in this generation, I am still calling them. His voice shattered me when he said that. I realized he wasn't just giving me instructions to prepare for the darkness. He was awakening me to my role, my responsibility, to be a beacon to those who haven't heard him clearly. So I made a decision. I started visiting schools' youth groups, even street corners where teens would gather, not to preach, but to share. To tell my story, to tell his story. At first, some laughed. Another old man with a fantasy, I heard them whisper. But then, I looked into the eyes of a boy named Marco. Pierced eyebrows, hard look, and I knew he was hurting. I walked up to him and simply said, "I died, Marco, but Jesus sent me back for you." He didn't laugh. He dropped his cigarette, and began to cry. That's when I knew. This story isn't just about the coming darkness, it's about a coming awakening. One afternoon, I stood in a small chapel with a group of young people who had been drifting aimlessly. I told them about the 3 days of darkness, about the visions I saw, about how even the most advanced technologies could not stop what's coming. But I also told them the greatest light they would ever need is already within reach. They sat in stunned silence. I ended with these words: "If your life ended tonight, would you meet Jesus as a stranger or as a friend?" Tears streamed. Some knelt. Some lifted their hands in surrender. That day something ignited. Youth, who had never opened a Bible before, started reading Psalm 91 together. Teenagers who once mocked worship now sang with trembling voices. And those who had one foot in the world began stepping fully into the presence of God. And I watched it all not as a preacher, but as a witness. The youth will lead the revival, Gabriel. They carry a boldness that the enemy fears. But they must be equipped not with fear, but with fire from heaven. Teach them to praise. Teach them to love the word. And tell them, I am not far. I can't forget those words. I see them now. Young men, young women, some from broken homes, some with painful pasts, lifting their voices like warriors, not in rebellion, but in reverence. You see, the mission God gave me wasn't just to warn about destruction. It was to call forth hope, especially in a world where hopelessness is the norm. It's not enough to tell people to hide during the darkness. We must teach them how to shine before it ever comes. So I keep going. Every story I tell, every scripture I teach, every trembling voice I hear sing in the middle of doubt, I know without a shadow of doubt. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of something holy, something powerful. And I won't stop, not until every heart that will hear has heard. After weeks of sharing my testimony, after watching lives change, I started to notice something else, something darker. In the news, in the streets, even in the churches, there was an unease, a strange silence before the storm, a pressure in the spirit, like the world itself was holding its breath. People felt it, but didn't know how to name it. And then one night, the Lord gave me another vision. I was not asleep. I was wide awake in prayer when suddenly I was pulled into a realm that felt like the backstage of history, behind the scenes of what the media feeds us, what politicians say, what preachers avoid. I saw a table, a long black table, surrounded by powerful men. World leaders, business tycoons, military advisors, but they were not in control. They were listening to something else. A voice, deep, smooth, seductive, spoke in a language I didn't understand, but somehow I knew what it meant. A plan, a dark agenda, not for war, not for peace, but for control. Control of the skies, control of food, control of thought, and behind it, shadows moved, intelligent, ancient, watching, not human. The plot was clear: let the world spiral into fear, then offer false salvation through a false unity, a savior that isn't Christ, a new order that promises peace, but only brings chains. Gabriel, what you see is the gathering of the great lie. The dragon prepares his stage. He will offer light, but it will be artificial. He will promise freedom, but it will be slavery. Warn them, not all peace is divine. Not all unity is holy. I felt sick. I wanted to look away. But Jesus said, "You must see it. My people perish, not because the darkness is strong, but because they close their eyes. Open yours, Gabriel, and show them." Then I saw technology. Screens, glowing hands, digital sermons delivered not by pastors but by algorithms. A false gospel whispered in voices that sound holy but are hollow. I saw Christians arguing online while demons danced in the shadows. And then I saw the churches. Some stood firm, filled with light praise and repentance. But others, they had stained glass and golden crosses, but no presence of God. Their altars had been traded for stages. Their shepherds had become performers. And worst of all, their flocks were asleep. I stood in the middle of a megachurch as fog machines filled the air, and I cried out, "Where is Jesus?" Silence. My house has become a concert hall. My voice replaced by lights and applause. They sing about me, but do not speak with me. Tell them I am at the door, but soon I will pass by. I wept, not just because of what I saw, but because I knew many of them would not wake up until it was too late. Then I saw the final deception, so clever, so polished, so seductive. A world leader stepping onto a grand stage offering healing for the nations, a solution to the chaos, a miracle to end the fear. Crowds cheered, but behind his smile I saw the dragon. And then Jesus showed me us, his remnant, not glamorous, not trending, but burning with truth. Men and women in small houses, families praying with candles, children memorizing Psalm 91, elders singing praises, teenagers laying hands and casting out fear. They didn't have microphones, but they had power. These are my warriors. These are the ones I will use. They do not shine in the world, but in the Spirit they are flames. and when the darkness falls fully, their fire will be seen from the heavens." He looked at me, then eyes full of both grief and glory. "Gabriel, tell them, the war is not coming. It has already begun. Not with bombs, but with beliefs. Not with swords, but with silence. I am calling my people to rise not in fear, but in truth." And then the vision ended. I sat in the dark shaking. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I went straight to my journal and wrote down every word he gave me. The false light, the digital deception, the fake peace, the weakened churches, the secret war. I realized this was no longer about surviving 3 dark days. This was about surviving the dark age. My friends, this is not a dream, not fiction, not imagination. I saw it, I felt it, and now I carry it. What you are hearing now is not just the testimony of a man who died. It's the call of a watchman sounding the trumpet before the fire falls. We are being lulled into sleep, distracted by politics, by entertainment, by fear. But beneath it all, a war rages one for your soul. It's time to rise, time to fast, time to pray, time to cleanse, time to choose. Not what is popular, but what is holy. Because when the deception reaches its peak, only those anchored in truth will stand. And the truth is a person. I don't know how long I sat in that silence, hands trembling heart, still echoing with the words of heaven. The weight of what I had seen, the darkness, the deception, the global agenda pressed heavy on my chest. But it wasn't fear that consumed me now. It was urgency. A fire had been lit inside me, one that no man could extinguish. I stood before my mirror that morning. The same old man, wrinkled face, tired eyes. But when I looked deeper, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Courage and a mission. This was no longer just about me. It wasn't about proving anything, or convincing skeptics, or sounding impressive. It was about one thing only: saving souls. I took my Bible, the journal, where I had written every word Jesus showed me, and I walked to the center of our small town. I didn't go to a pulpit. I didn't rent a hall. I stood in the square, just me and the message. People walked by. Some paused. Some scoffed. But I wasn't speaking to ears. I was speaking to spirits. "Listen to me," I said, voice trembling but full. "You don't know me. Maybe you think I'm just an old man rambling about dreams. But I tell you now, I died, and I met Jesus. And what he showed me is coming whether we're ready or not." Faces turned. Phones came out to record. A young woman whispered, "Is this about the end times?" I nodded. "It's not the end of the world," I said. "It's the end of deception." Then I lifted the journal and read his final words to me, etched deep in my soul. "Gabriel, my beloved, tell them this. My return will not come quietly. The sky will not dim without reason. The earth will not tremble without purpose. Every sign, every warning is mercy shouting before judgment arrives. Tell them prepare not with fear, but with truth." I looked at the crowd forming around me. Some laughed, but others, they wept. One man fell to his knees, clutching his chest, whispering, "Forgive me, God, I didn't know." A teenage boy asked, "Sir, is there still time?" I stepped toward him, eyes burning with compassion. "Yes," I said. "That's why I'm here." I shared everything. The 5 instructions, the visions, the social deception, the counterfeit unity, and the call to holiness. But most of all, I shared the truth I had seen in Jesus' eyes. A love greater than all judgment, a mercy deeper than all sin, a forgiveness that still stands open for now. Tell them, my arms are open still, but the door will not remain open forever. The midnight cry is coming. The bride must awaken. The oil must be ready, and my voice must be known not as a rumor, but as a whisper in their soul. At those words I wept openly, because I knew he wasn't speaking of some distant crowd. He was speaking of you. Yes, you the one listening now, the one scrolling, wondering if this is just another video. I plead with you, stop! Do not treat this as content. Do not treat this as entertainment. This is not a warning to click past. It is the voice of the Lord knocking at the last door of time. And you're that door, my friend. When the sky goes dark, when the media goes silent, when fear chokes the cities and lies fill the air, what will you stand on? Whose voice will guide you? What truth will you hold? I do not seek perfect people. I seek prepared hearts. Those who will repent, who will return, who will rise. The world may laugh, but heaven is listening. So, here I am, just Gabriel Alonso, once a doubter, once a dying man, now a living testimony. I don't claim to know everything, but I know this. Jesus is real. Hell is real. And the time of shaking is at the door. But you don't have to be afraid. You were made for this moment. You were born for this battle. You were chosen for this hour. There's still time, still mercy, still light. But the clock is ticking. Let this be your wake-up call. Let this be the moment you fall to your knees and cry out, Jesus, I choose you. Not religion, not the crowd, not fear, but you. Because when the storm comes, only those who know his voice will stand. And now, if you hear that voice, don't harden your heart. Don't delay. He's calling you right now. Come, my child, you've wandered long enough. Come home. My dear brothers and sisters, if you've stayed with me through this story, if your heart has been stirred even just once, then let me tell you this. It wasn't because of me. It wasn't the voice. It was him. Jesus has been calling you, not through thunder, not through lightning, but through the gentle whisper that cuts through the noise of this world. And if your soul feels that quiet stirring, don't brush it off. Don't say, maybe later. Because later is not guaranteed. We live in a world full of noise, distractions, lies, and empty promises. But heaven isn't shouting to compete with it. Heaven is waiting for you to be still, to listen, and to return. Child, if your heart is open, I will fill it. If your eyes are lifted, I will guide you. If you are willing, I will use you. So, what will you do with this message? Will you walk away and forget? Or will you do what few dare to do in this age? Stand, prepare, believe, and act. Leave a comment right now. Say Amen if you feel the Spirit speaking. Not for me, but as a step of faith. A declaration that you are listening, that you are choosing truth. Like this video, if the message has touched you, it tells the platform, this matters. This kind of truth needs to be heard. Subscribe to this channel because more messages are coming, more testimonies, more revelations, more urgent calls to prepare. Together, we're not building a following. We're building a remnant, a generation that still believes, still prays, still hopes, still hears the voice of Jesus, and chooses light in the midst of darkness. And lastly, share this video with someone you love, a friend, a brother, a parent, a child. You never know how one small share could lead to a soul returning home. My name is Gabriel. I once lived for routine. I died in confusion, but I returned burning with purpose, because God gave me a message not to keep, but to give. And now it's yours. You've heard it. Now, what will you do? Blessed are those who hear these words and prepare. May His peace guard you. May His truth guide you, and may His light never leave your home. From my heart to yours, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the light.